Okay. So I began last recording talking about understanding the system, and I introduced these four truths. So I want to do a deep dive into this first one, problems. So when we're talking about problems, what kinds of problems are we talking about? We're really talking about all kinds of problems. So roughly speaking, we can say what we don't like, having to encounter what we don't like. Um, Having to encounter what we don't like is the first one. Having to uh, part with what we do like and failing to satisfy our desires. So basically, big. These three are critical examples of the kinds of problems that we experience. So, so you can appreciate these. Now, you have a wish and you struggle to get it, you fail to satisfy that desire. That's the first kind of problem you encounter. You're trying to get something, you can't get it. That's frustrating. That causes problems. The second is along the way having to encounter all kinds of things you don't like. And eventually, then you're having to part with all the things that you do like. Now, that's very, very broad and very, very general. And so we experience endless of these, right? We're always finding things we like, trying to get them, but being frustrated, not getting the things we want. That sucks, right? And then along the way, in endless ways around our life, we're encountering things we don't like, physical pains, mental problems, people we don't want to work with, feel things that feel like they're disappointing, and too many emails and too many assignments and all this kind of stuff. That's all the stuff we don't like. And then when you have something, right, you have to part with it. So maybe you have a partner and the partner leaves you, you've got a job and you get fired from the job, you get some possession, it breaks, favorite sweater or something like that, gets holes in it, these kinds of things. You have to part with all the things you like. Now, those can be on a very, yeah, they can be minor problems or they can be major problems, but it's a whole bunch of things like that. Now, there's an even deeper way of thinking about these, which is that these problems, if you look at on a massive scale the kinds of problems that we have to experience in our life, the biggest one that we really struggle with and try to avoid is death. Death is what you call the ultimate problem for people. So, death is absolutely not what we're looking for. Um, Now, along the way, if you know anybody who's quite aged, experiencing all the sufferings of aging, you'll come to understand that aging is incredibly painful. Aging brings the loss of our health and our mental clarity. Friends around us die. We experience many more different kinds of sickness and so forth. Aging is an enormous suffering. But even prior to aging, we experience sickness, lots of kinds of sickness. So obviously, we've just had COVID as a pandemic, um, uh, lots of sickness there. One of the problems with aging, of course, is that it brings with it a lot of sickness. And so these are not totally mutually separate. But yeah, endless sickness throughout our life. So these are kind of on a physical level. Now, there's one other very interesting one that's traditionally included in this list, which is birth. Now, birth is very interesting to list birth as a problem. Um, Typically, when there's a birth, new child, everybody's very excited. You bring gifts, you have a party, and so forth. One person who's not very excited about that whole scenario is the baby. Baby's first response to this life is to cry and to scream. And if you think about the experience of a small child, right, or baby, they're in extraordinary pain and fear. They've left the warmth, the comfort, the quiet, the stability of the womb. They've entered the cold, cruel world. And think about how many times you cried when you were a little baby, when you were a child, right? all my crying settled down, became quite infrequent over the years. But I cried a lot my first couple of years. I think my mom would tell you. Why? Because there's pain, there's fear, there's uncertainty, there's just this fundamental unknowing. Now, babies don't have a chance to speak very much. We don't really hear from them in the voting public very much, but we can understand from direct observation clearly babies are suffering quite a lot of problems, and it takes a long time. We basically, from the time of birth, we're just trying to accumulate knowledge to be able to navigate this world better and better and better. But it's a very, very rough patch for the first few years of our life. And then, of course, that's punctuated by sickness, and aging, of course, pervades the entirety of this period of our life between birth and death. And so together, these seven sufferings, they constitute both the physical and the mental sufferings that we all experience, these different kinds of problems. So when we say the system is about solving our problems, and then I enumerate that these are the problems we want to solve, it's that's quite a bold list of things to say I can offer, or someone can offer solutions to all these problems. It sounds unrealistic. Now, a lot of people will offer you, propose solutions to particular of these challenges. So, failing to satisfy our desires, right? You can't find a partner. Well, I'll tell you how to find a partner. Style your hair like this, dye your hair, style it in this certain way, and so forth. And that will help you to resolve the problem of failing to find a partner. Yeah, maybe it will, maybe it won't. Even if you find the partner, you'll have to encounter a lot of things, other problems along the way. Once you have a partner, you experience all kinds of problems with that person. So we may evade particular problems sometimes. We may occasionally be able to steer clear of, we almost lost a job, having to part with what we like, and then we managed to keep our job by working extra hard and not being laid off when other people were laid off, for example. So, but that's a temporary reprieve, right? These seven, they come at you relentlessly. They come at us from all angles, from all sides. Now, it looks like impossible that you would ever be able to solve problems like these. But these are the problems that we are trying to tackle. And so we'll look in more detail about where these really come from an internal point of view, and how we can tackle these problems from an internal point of view.